right, first up, we are so excited to have the team from Visual. So come on up.
Good evening, friends. In 2017, so my name is Chuck. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Visual. In 2017, I had a dream that we would get to produce a VR experience for the Super Bowl. I had other dreams too, but they're not appropriate for this audience. As the end of 2017 drew near, it didn't look like it was going to be likely, but then suddenly, a few months before the Super Bowl was to launch, our dream came true twice. So we had 2 VR projects to build in a span of a few short months. So of course I called on the best darn VR developers in town, which is these guys. They'll introduce themselves in a minute. But the 2 projects are, the first one is for Be The Match. Has anyone heard of that? Well, got some woos. It's a project of the National Marrow Donor Registry. So we created a VR brand experience for them for the Super Bowl. That came to us through our friends at Cicerone, a digital marketing agency. And the other client was Midwest Dairy Association. So you know cows are going to be involved, so get ready for cows. And that project came to us through our friends Belmont Partners. And with that, here's Patrick.
Yeah, my name is Patrick Sweeney. I am the founder and creative director of a company called Puzzle Fox Interactive. And I'll pass it to Martin.
Hi, I'm Martin Greider, freelance, contract, VR, and game developer. I help run our local Twin Cities International Game Developers Association chapter.
And I'm David Roberts, and I do a lot of different things, mostly freelance projects, do 3D modeling, do a little bit of game design, just a little bit of web, a little of everything. But for these projects, I did the 3D modeling for the farm scene that you're about to see, and also I was the on-site kind of VR technician all throughout the duration of the week-long event, fixing stuff, troubleshooting, and all of the above.
Great, so is this on? Yep. So we're just gonna launch right into it. So as Chuck mentioned, what we're presenting today are 2 virtual reality projects that we had the pleasure to work on as part of the festivities at the Super Bowl when it was here in Minneapolis last February. This first one is for Be The Match, a nonprofit national marrow donor program. This project was less a game and more of an interactive narrative experience, the purpose of which was to compel the players to join the donor registry. And for this experience, the player had a single HTC Vive controller with the attached styrofoam Q-tip. The Q-tip was mirrored in the headset, meaning the player could see it, and pressing the Q-tip into buttons and pointing the Q-tip were the only means that the player had to interact with the experience. The physical Q-tip also helped differentiate the experience from a bunch of other virtual reality experiences that were available at this time. And so it was a topic of conversation as people walked into the pop-up. Both experiences we worked on targeted the HTC Vive, which is the headset that you see here. It's room scale virtual reality, which means that it's tethered to a high-end computer, and as you walk around in the space, it's one-to-one with the space itself. The HTC Vive works with these laser emitters called lighthouses that we set up in the corners of the play space, and the headset and controllers detect these lasers which sweep across the space at high frequency and use them to calculate their position. The player is prompted to find a match for a specific patient. We had like 5 or 6 patient cards in this experience, and you get one randomly selected each time you played. In this part of the experience that you just saw, the players scanning cartoonish people to find a donor match. And one of the only complaints we had about this experience was that part went on too long. Initially it was 1 minute long, and we shortened it down to 30 seconds midway through the week. Patrick and I worked really closely during development of both of these projects. Patrick does more of the art and graphic design while I do more of the programming and back-end development. For this project, Patrick did by far the bulk of the design and planning up front as well. Generally, though, for both of these projects, Patrick laid out the virtual elements while I handled most of the programming and all of the VR interactions. Yeah, so Be The Match had a booth on Nicollet Mall as part of Super Bowl Live. This was something that you could just walk up to on Nicollet Mall, and which my daughter did several times throughout the week, each time bragging loudly that her dad made it. So we're going to get started. Load up the second experience. This one was the one for Midwest Dairy. For part of their Fuel Up to Play 60 initiative, which was a booth at the Super Bowl experience, which took place during the same week before the Super Bowl, but this one at the Minneapolis Convention Center. The difference between the two areas, Super Bowl Live was on Nicollet Mall and outdoors during February. And then the Super Bowl experience was inside the convention center, but you still had to wait in line outside to get into it. We're just going to load that up again. And Patrick's just seeing like an empty wasteland of virtual nothing right now. That's exactly what... You must be a Windows developer. Okay, great. So this was a two-part demo with the first scene, as you see here, a miniaturized farm, actually modeled on a real farm somewhere in rural Minnesota by David, and the second scene taking place in a football locker room. The goal of the experience was to gather these golden coins. Originally, the goal had been to gather healthy foods, but the NFL actually had to approve all the art assets for the game, and at some point they said, hey, wait, no food in the locker room, so we nixed that idea. These detailed models were mostly made by David using an open source 3D modeling program called Blender. The environment and most of the models in the locker room scene were actually purchased from the Unity Asset Store, which is a marketplace for video game assets and plugins. David also did a ton of the texture work, which is the graphics that lay on top of the 3D models for both scenes. Both of these projects were made with Unity that I mentioned casually there, which is sometimes referred to as Photoshop for game development. Unity is a cross-platform game engine that is in heavy use for VR and actually drives a large percentage of all game development on basically every platform. In the farm scene, all the coins are just positioned under the roofs of the various buildings, but as you can see, I had licensed to get creative with the coins for the locker room. We kept quite a few coins out in the open to find, but several were hidden and would only appear when specific conditions were met, like throwing a football into that open locker room across the room or placing a shoe correctly next to its pair. One fun bug we had while developing this project, there's this infinite football spawner, and it wasn't assigning the parent correctly for the footballs, so we'd reset the game, and the footballs would still be there. So for like a day, we had like hundreds of footballs in every scene. All right, we're gonna have to wrap up. Thanks for having us.